Hey guys, I know it's been forever, but with all the Legion prep to get stuff ready for you all, some videos did hit the back burner a little, so I'm going to start with an apology on that one. Anyway, the pre-patch is upon us and is going to be in your hands either tomorrow or Wednesday, and you'll get to play that brand new shiny enhancement that we've been talking about for all this time, even though it definitely doesn't feel like it's 6 months since we actually started playing it. Anyway, this is the first of a few videos I'm going to be getting out there for the pre-patch and mechanic overviews in the run-up to Legion to supplement the documents, guides and resources I have going out, culminating in the release of my full-fledged guide on Google Docs, much like in WOD. This will include things like a close look at Maelstrom, or how to manage it, the new weak aura set I have coming soon, cooldown management, and all those other small mechanical style videos that are oriented towards something specific, much like the bite-sized video on Echo of the Elements I did in WOD. To start with, in this video, I'm just going to be going through some of the important changes that you need to be aware of, and also quickly run through my cheat sheet I put out today, which includes general rotation, stat weights, new trinket values, talents, and a few other simple things like that. These are all specific to the pre-patch, so you can find the cheat sheet I produced below in the description, alongside a couple of other links to the current Legion guide information that we have. So enough of that, let's just talk about the pre-patch. To start with, let's grab the simple rotation that you're going to be looking at when you're playing in the Legion environment. The very first thing that you're going to notice is that we are now tied to Maelstrom, which is a new active builder, spender, resource gameplay style. You're going to generate it through Rock Biter, Auto Attacks, and Wind Fury, and you're going to spend it on big heavy-hitting abilities that we used to use in Warlords, like Storm Strike and Lava Lash. Storm Strike is your big heavy hitter spell. It is the one that has the longest cooldown, and it also has mechanics tied to it, so that is the one that you are going to want to use as frequently as possible. On top of that, Fire Nova is now gone and has been replaced with Crash Lightning, which is instead a cleave ability that allows your regular attacks to also deal a small amount of splash damage for a fixed amount when you hit at least 2 targets with the initial spell. Lastly, our baseline cooldown, Feral Spirits, have been buffed to do so much higher damage now, and also generate Maelstrom when they attack. Whilst at the same time we have lost the baseline Ascendants and Fire Elementals, so they are now our only cooldown on 2 minutes. The general rotation then is that you're going to want to use your Wolves on cooldown as frequently as possible. You're going to want to Storm Strike on cooldown, especially if you get those Stormbringer procs. If you're in AoE, you want to Crash Lightning, especially if there's 2 targets that are right next to each other, just so you can get that splash buff, as that is technically a single target increase now. You then want to maintain the Flame Tongue buff, which is a flat damage increase, but is free. Not that exciting, but it is your maintenance buff, much like Flame Shock was in Warlords. You then want to spend any excess Maelstrom over 90 on Lava Lashes. This is your weakest spell and is solely used to drain off excess. Don't overuse this, as it will severely hinder the amount of damage that you deal. Lastly, in any empty globals, or if you need to generate any Maelstrom, you're going to want to cast Rock Biter. This is your main generation spell, and this is the one that you're going to be pressing the most when you have any empty global cooldowns, because it has a big effect on filling out your rotation. Now, don't be worried when you first pick this up, because Maelstrom is a bit of a finicky beast. You do need to have a good amount of pre-experience with it to know the ebb and flow of how it plays and how it handles. But with a bit of practice and a bit of playtime, you'll pick it up really quickly, and you'll know when you're going to have a large amount of excess Maelstrom, or when you're going to need to hold back a little bit so that you can still fuel your main abilities. Don't panic if your first experience is bad. Just stick at it, give it a bit of practice, and I'm sure you'll catch on to it really quickly. Next, the other big change that comes up is the new stat weights. First of all, Mastery has been changed. It does still give the elemental damage increase, but it now also increases the chance for your Stormbringer, which resets the cooldown of your Storm Strike, and also reduces its cost by 50% on the next cast, and on top of that, to not incur its regular cooldown. Basically, a Stormbringer proc is the nuts, and it is really important to make use of them as quickly as possible, and it does form a bit of a crux, like the hinge of the new gameplay. On top of that, it also gives the same amount of increase to Wind Fury, which is also going to impact your Maelstrom generation and a little bit of your burst, but bear in mind, it does take a lot of rating to actually get a 1% increase on both of these effects. So don't be surprised if you're not seeing a colossal increase when you do raise your Mastery by quite a lot. Generally speaking, the stat priority has remained the same from the alpha. It is still Mastery for those increased Stormbringer and elemental damage procs. Haste, just because it reduces the global cooldown and gives you more instances to trigger these effects. Versatility, because it gives you flat damage. Then Crit is at the bottom because it just scales worse than Verse. One other thing to note is that Mastery and Haste have a symbiotic relationship. You don't want to go too far either side of them, so you don't want to have your Mastery 5 or 6 times the amount of Haste, because then Haste will become the dominant stat that you want to start stacking. You need to keep it in balance. Roughly a Haste at 60% of where your Mastery is a good place to be, so that you're going to have a fairly rounded stat weight for them. And the last in the trinity of big questions is your talent choices. The full talent choices and explanations can be found in the overview doc in the description. That's been kept maintained since the very early alpha, so that covers everything in terms of your rotation and your talent choices. However, generally speaking, you want to take Boulder Fist, Ancestral Swiftness, Tempest, Crashing Storm, and Landslide as a catch-all build. This will work in solo play, dungeons, raids, or any type of content that you want to do. Hailstorm is superior for DPS, but it is higher maintenance, and in solo play and low duration encounters, it does suffer a little bit because it needs that bit more maintenance. If, however, you're talking about raids or dungeons, generally speaking, if you can play with Hailstorm, that's the one to go for. The exact same situation goes with Empowered Stormlash. This is a great talent for your group play, but it is completely worthless in solo because of the sheer lack of damage, because you aren't triggering the extra Stormlashes on other players. So definitely avoid it outside of a raid environment. Ascendance as well can work just fine if you're especially talking about Hellfire Citadel, where you've got the ring to prop up your burst. So it is more of a personal choice as to whether you stick for the more passive option with Landslide, which is very, very difficult to make a mistake with, or you go with Ascendance, which is a bit more burst, a bit more cooldown oriented, and a little bit more RNG because you're reliant on the Stormbringer procs on your win strikes. To finish up, there's just a few quick things on trinkets that I wanted to talk about, since this is probably at the forefront of your mind if you're raiding when it comes to your gear in the pre-patch. As you can see on the screen, this is a single target sim. This shows roughly the hierarchy of the trinkets. This is assumed with the optimal profile, so it does include Hailstorm. But you can see here that the crafted trinkets are absolutely the go-to. This is mostly because Hellfire Citadel trinkets got a universal nerf in all situations. So most of the time, you want to stay clear of them. Especially the class trinket, which is now terrible because of the reduced Wind Fury chance on average, because you aren't going to get Mastery to fuel it up to the old 15%. On demons, the heirloom can catch up quite a lot. When trinkets are combined with her, both are crafted tend to be at least competitive, if not better, because they sync up with each other and the ring and our cooldown feral spirits. So most of the time, you're just going to want to stick to them if you can. Otherwise, just grab the trinket that you've got on there that's the highest and you'll do the best with that. AoE is much the same, except just like in WoD, Mirror remains powerful just due to its base damage rate and the fact that you can stack it up with your other cooldowns and on the predictable AoE waves. So if you have that, that's a perfect choice. If not, not too much to worry because it's not that significantly worse than the other options on the list. In terms of best trinkets then, I'd personally go with Skull of War and Stone of the Elements, and whilst Skull may be a crit proc, it syncs perfectly with rings and wolves and stone if you're taking that as well, and because it's a predictable ICD, you don't need to worry about it coming up, especially in comparison to the RPPM trinkets, which have all been nerfed in Legion so they aren't a guaranteed proc on the pull. Your alternative options are your Chip Soul Prism from Kazakh, or the Heirloom, but generally speaking there's not a colossal gap in the trinket choices that you make. If you're not that worried about it, it's probably not really worth investing the money for a brief period of time that the pre-patch is on trinkets like that. You will still be able to perform relatively well if you're using Hellfire trinkets. I'd just stay clear of the class trinket. Alright guys, so it's good to be back with videos, and you should expect to see me annoying you in your video feed much more frequently now that the early wind-up to Legion is over. Anything I've said in this video, you can probably catch in the description in its written format for quick reference. I hope this has answered a lot of the burning questions about the pre-patch because I have been getting a lot of them. If it did, please remember to hit that like and subscribe at the bottom, and I'll see you all in Legion.